Now, we've previously seen how the way that women are represented in adverts can be very stereotypical. So by representing women as stereotypical housewives who have nothing better to do than to cook for their husbands and get very, very upset when the cooking doesn't go to plan, if they maybe burn it. Likewise, the men that are represented in these adverts are represented in a sort of very stereotypical masculine way. Like, they are the breadwinners, they are the ones that go out to work, they don't have time to make their own dinner, they really need or their breakfast even. They need to wait on their or rely on their wife to do that for them, because they have to deal with the very, very important business of going out to work every day. However, women in particular can be represented in different ways, and this is what we're going to look at just now. In this advert here, we can see an image of a young woman in a bikini with a lot of her body on show, and next to her is the question, are you beach body ready? Now, in the way that the question is being asked, it's almost indicating to us, well, this image of this young woman here, this is what you should be aspiring to. Her body is the way that your body should look, and this can be quite harmful to young women and teenage girls in particular, but all women. It can be very harmful to all women, because if your body doesn't look like this particular person's here in the picture, then some people can start to think that there is something wrong with the way that they look or the way that their body looks, and that can lead to a whole host of issues. So a lot of people and organisations tend to sort of rail against and campaign against adverts like this because of the damage that can be done to young women, girls, older women as well. So the way that women are being represented in this advert is as a sexualised being or a sexual object. Similarly, women are being represented as sexual objects in this advert for Burger King. So we see here a woman, she's being pictured side on with her mouth open, a very sort of vacant look in her eyes, almost like she's just staring through everything. She's got extremely heavy makeup on her eyes, her cheeks and her lips, and she's being made up to look like a blow-up doll, and that sort of ties in with the slogan, it'll blow your mind away. So this woman again in this advert is being represented as a sexual object. Now I'm going to show you an advert here that is stereotyping women and girls, and I would like you to have a think about. You could also just make some notes about all of the different stereotypes that you hear and see coming up in this advert for this chocolate bar. So I'll play this just now for you.
Yorkie, please, mate.
You're not a bird, are you?
No.
Explain the offside rule then.
A player cannot be in an advanced position of the opponent's last defender when the ball is played.
Open that. Stockings are tight.
Stockings.
Oh look! A big hairy spider! You know, that wrapper really brings out the beautiful blue of your eyes.
Really?
Yorkie, 5 big masculine chunks of chocolate. It's not for girls.
So there's quite a few things going on there. You've probably picked out that the way that women and girls are being stereotyped is that they are afraid of spiders, that girls and women don't understand sports, which is why he was asking her to explain the offside rule, that women and girls are stereotypically weak, which is why he asked her to open a jar, and he finally caught her out at the end by complimenting her, by flattering her, by talking about the beautiful blue in her eyes. So again, that plays into the stereotype that women love a compliment and love to be flattered. On the other side of it, the narrator at the end talks about how Yorkie has masculine chunks of chocolate, which is a really, really weird way to describe a bar of chocolate. Now, if you've ever had a Yorkie bar, you'll know that the bar is very sort of big and very sort of chunky, and it's like they're sort of playing into the size of the chocolate bar that equates to it being masculine, almost like because it is so chunky that gives it a more sort of masculine effect than a I suppose a more sort of like thinner, like slender chocolate bar. So a lot of stereotypes in this one, and the I suppose the reason the reason that the producers have chosen to include these stereotypes in this particular instance is for comedic value. It's supposed to be a sort of comedy or funny advert that's supposed to appeal to people's sense of humour. Now, stereotyping and representation of women doesn't just stop at fictional characters in adverts and in films. It also leads on to sort of actors in the media who are maybe doing photo shoots or giving interviews as well in magazines, and this is one such example here. Now you can see quite a lot of differences in this person here who's been photographed. On the left hand side is the original image, and on the right hand side is the photoshopped edited image. What I would like you to do is just pause the video here, just take a minute or two and just make a wee list of all of the things that you can see between these two pictures that have been edited. So what is different between the two pictures? So you might have picked out things like in the picture on the right hand side, her hair looks a lot glossier. Some of the sort of more flyaway, frizzier bits of hair have been just cropped right out. It's just been edited out, and her hair looks a lot shinier. She's also had her skin lightened, so she looks a lot whiter than she does in the picture on the left hand side. So you can consider what the sort of the issues and what harmfulness surrounds the issue of skin lightening and photo shoots as well. You can also see that they've smoothed out her shape as well. So on the left hand side we can see that there's it looks like a part of her rib that's sort of sticking out, that they've sort of smoothed away there, and all of this has been done in order to sort of enhance how she looks, although I'm sure that most people would look at the left hand picture and not see anything wrong with that at all. But this doesn't just happen with women, this editing of photos. It doesn't just happen with female actors and pop stars and things like that. It also happens with males. And here you can see Justin Bieber in this Calvin Klein advert. On the left hand side is the enhanced photoshopped version, and on the right hand side is the original version, and it's quite staggering how different both versions are. They've really bulked up his body to make him look more stereotypically masculine, and give him more of a stereotypical masculine looking body, in the shape of having bigger arms and looking more muscular. So representation is also a very important term within the genre of action and adventure, and this is us now going back to films. So men and women in general are almost always kept within their very clear and stereotypical gender roles in action adventure films, and this has been enforced over decades of filming. So here you'll see different male characters from different action and adventure films, and you'll probably recognise some of these. But notice what the physical similarities are that all of these characters have. They've all they're all exaggerated examples of masculinity, and they're all supposed to be role models for the male audience to aspire to and want to be like. Let me just try and get rid of that bar at the bottom for you. That's not going to disappear. I'll put this slide up on the Teams page anyway for you guys, so if there's any wee bits of writing missing at the bottom, then you can go through the PowerPoint in your own time. But you can see here that all of the male characters are very muscular. They've all got their muscles on show, whether it's their their tops being open to show their chest and their arms, or in the case of Superman, he's got a very, very tight fitting costume which still shows off all his muscles, and this is supposed to be what the males, the male audience, or the boys and men that go and see these films are supposed to aspire to look like. But what about female characters in action and adventure films? Well, here in this, you might recognise these two characters from Die Hard. This is John McClane's wife from Die Hard. She's the sort of damsel in distress that John McClane has to go and save. And on the left hand side of the picture is Alan Rickman, who's the villain, and look at the way that he's grabbing her arm, and she's powerless to get away from his very strong hold. She just kind of looks at him and doesn't really know how to get away from him. She's also wearing a very, very low cut top, so she's being represented as a sort of sexualized being again. But she's also being represented as being stereotypically weak because she can't get away from the grip of the villain here. If you've seen Iron Man, you'll know that this is Pepper Potts, who is Iron Man's other half. And you can see here, although the two of these characters aren't enemies, there's still almost like an aggressive way that Iron Man is looking at Pepper Potts here. So she is still being represented as being stereotypically weak. If you look at her body language and the way that she is sort of leaning back, so Iron Man's sort of leaning over her, pushing her body back, and she's leaning away from him in a sort of submissive way, which represents her as being stereotypically weak. Here's another shot from Indiana Jones. This time Indiana Jones is rescuing this damsel in distress. He is picking her up from the floor. Something must have happened where she can't walk herself, so she is being represented as being stereotypically weak again. She's got her arms around his neck, ready to just be whisked away by her hero. And look at her costume as well. She is wearing white, so this time she's not being, the woman isn't being presented as being sexualized, but she is being represented as being very innocent and pure, and that is done through the use of costume here. This white costume makes her seem angelic and pure and innocent. And the last one here, a very, very different character to the other three female characters in these shots. So here we have Wonder Woman, but you can see that Wonder Woman, the character, women are still being represented as being sexual objects here. If you look back at Iron Man's costume, he is covered head to toe in costuming, and you can't really see anything of his body. Whereas as another superhero, Wonder Woman, she has a lot of flesh, a lot of skin on show here, so that is representing women as sexual objects again. So now that I've talked through all of those, I would like you to just take a few minutes, pause this video here, and make a note of your thoughts on how each of these female characters are being represented in these films. So pause the video here just for a few minutes, guys, and make some notes on these 4 shots. Now that we're coming to the end of this lesson, I'd like to gather your thoughts on what you've seen and the tasks that you've done and what you've learned this lesson, because during the next lesson we're going to look at how Rachel is represented in The Dark Knight. So this is the task that I would like you to do. I would like you to post to your Teams page under where the instructions have been typed for today's lesson the following. 1 way in which you think Rachel is represented in The Dark Knight, and 2 ways that the representation of Rachel has been constructed. Okay, so I want you to think about, with all of the things that we've spoken about representation, especially with women in general today, how might that translate into how Rachel is represented in The Dark Knight, and how did Christopher Nolan, what decisions did Christopher Nolan make in order to represent Rachel in that way. So this is the end of the lesson now, guys. So once you've gathered your thoughts on both of these points here, and you've typed them up under the instructions for today, and your teacher will have a look at them, and they'll have a discussion with you at the end of the lesson. Okay, thanks guys.